Something I came to realize around the time I was making my video on Golden Shark a few weeks ago now, I was suddenly hit with a question I couldn't answer, but one that had extremely significant importance. Why would the average player care to revisit these heists even if they were completely reworked? As it stands now, Payday 3 doesn't have much of an incentive to play new or different heists besides keeping things from being monotonous or getting a specific daily challenge like getting the crypto wallet and Rock the Cradle done. That, as well as a number of other issues in Payday 3, are what I'm aiming to tackle in this lengthy video. I'll be talking about the changes the progression system could use, some much needed changes and additions to the current skill system, how I think weapons could be easily improved, and some other general things that annoy me. Plus, I'll be talking about a whole new theoretical page of skills that could very reasonably be added to the game for stealth, as well as just general use. Oh, and a certain someone who'd be a perfect crossover character to get more people playing this heisting game. So, since this is going to be lengthier than my previous forays into Payday 3, I'd strongly recommend grabbing something to sit back and relax with while I ramble on about this mess of a game I can't put down. You know how I know that Starbreeze knows the progression system as it is just sucks? The fact that in their open beta for peer-to-peer testing they changed the complete the crowd control tutorial infamy payout from only 25 to 250,000, which immediately puts you at max level. I think they did this not only because they wanted people to play the game how they normally would, but also because if you started from the ground up, it'd take months to reach level 150. So I'm going to talk about ways to make that better without an instant max level button. The first thing I'm going to talk about is changing the way Payday 3's progression works both for the heister and their equipment, but I'm going to start with the progression of something you likely didn't expect, the heists themselves. My suggestion is to change the favor system as well, completely reworking it to be somewhat similar to Hitman and that game's mastery system for specific levels. In Hitman, when you gain experience for completing things, that goes towards your main account, but also towards the mission location you just completed. Every time that level increases, you're rewarded with something relating to the mission itself. Sometimes it's a new starting location or a spot to stash a hidden item, and in some cases, it just gives you an item period. I think Payday adopting a similar system for the favors, as well as some heist-specific cosmetics, would definitely help with making people want to replay those heists for more than just ticking a box off of a checklist. Each heist's knowledge level could unlock a new favor until you've gotten all of them, and then once you've hit a certain point, each time you fill that heist experience bar, so to speak, you'd be given a specific paint job or mask pattern exclusive to that heist, renewable by filling that bar again however many times you like. After you unlock the favors, you could just buy them from the store, of course. Now that's how the heists themselves would give you a reward and reason to come back, but if that's all that was added, there'd still be the monotony of grinding everything from the ground up like there is now, which is simply tedious and boring, especially when you don't have that many skill points or weapons to play around with. To remedy this, I'm going to say that the old challenge system should be re-implemented. Not exactly how it was at launch, obviously enough, but more akin to when the heist giving you certain amounts of experience was first implemented alongside challenges, where you're guaranteed a certain payout for completion, but could get even more for doing a specific thing within that heist. Like completing cook-off with all 19 bags while getting a certain amount of turret kills or ADS marksman rifle kills, something along those lines. These challenges would range from simple things to do, like completing each individual heist without getting downed on each difficulty and loud, killing a number of enemies in a heist with a frag grenade, accidentally killing a civilian with a frag grenade, etc. The one challenge from the old system I want to use as an example and potentially bring back is one that was specific to the syntax error heist, where you had to complete this heist in stealth without using a single vent for traversal. Granted, you needed the external QR code favor to even attempt this, but actually completing it was very fun to do, as it felt like a puzzle to figure out, and the challenge completion was a nice reward for that hard work. Doubly so, since it served as a way to figure out how to do the heist without ever putting on your mask. There are challenges like that that I think should come back from the original challenge system as well, like one for Touch the Sky where you had to get Mason to his panic room without using the poison bottle. Of course, I'd be remiss not to address the more monotonous kill 50, 100, 250, 500, 1,000 enemies with specific weapons challenges. Those, while I can understand their existence, aren't exactly fun to complete, especially as it can somewhat railroad you into using a weapon you don't particularly enjoy that much. Instead, since I don't mind the concept of these for incentivizing trying different playstyles, would instead be a repeating challenge of sorts, where you get a large chunk of infamy points for killing every, say, 100 enemies with a weapon type, like an SMG or a shotgun. Now, this experience wouldn't just apply to your account and infamy level, but also be applied to the heist you just completed, as well as your weapons, making it so that leveling those up isn't nearly as much of a pain as it is right now. Speaking of weapons, I think these are also something that needs to be improved on, both in their presentation and menus, but also in how the attachments work, since right now only the sight, silencer, and magazine really matter, while the rest of the 7 total attachments are really there just to make the weapon movement feel different and very marginally at that. The easy way to fix that is to simply double the stat changes of each of these attachments so that they can feel much better to use when you build them a certain way. Another thing about weapons I want to talk about for a bit is the firing mode, which I got the idea for from, funnily enough, Kentucky Ballistics, specifically talking about the SPAS 12 shotgun having the ability to switch between semi-automatic and pump action firing modes.
Yep. So to switch between pump action and semi-automatic, you've just got this little button right here, and right now it is in pump action mode. For semi-auto mode, I push this button and I pull up.
This is something that I think would be really fun to add into Payday 3 for multiple weapons, where unlocking a specific handle or grip for them would allow you to customize the firing mode, depending on the weapon, of course. It's not exactly feasible to make a bolt action or lever action marksman rifle fully automatic, after all. But something like a burst fire SMG or marksman rifle would be fun for a certain subset of players, or a different fully automatic handgun than Tribune 32. You could even add in an SMG or assault rifle in the secondary slot so that you're picking between more than just a handgun or shotgun for your secondary, with the myriad of handguns and singular Justicar. If Starbreeze is desperate for money, they could also just charge some cash for these weapons in a weapon pack. Not that I want that to happen, but it is very realistic. Now, mixing this with the challenge suggestion I was talking about earlier, I want to bring up some weapon-specific attachments, primarily ones on the DLC weapons from Year 1, like the Adalig-specific hand stop or the War 45-specific stock. I think it would be a fun incentive to try out specific weapons if there were challenges tied to them, like getting a certain amount of ADS kills while you have the sight you want to unlock equipped with something like the FIC-22, for that weapon sight to be unlocked for purchase on other weapons like the CAR-4 or VF-7S assault rifles. I mean, it's not a good marksman scope, so you might as well try it on assault rifles, right? Other challenges in a similar vein could be added for other weapons and their specific attachments, at least as far as ones that could be placed on other weapons are concerned. I doubt any other weapon could get the unique grips on the Spearfish, for example. As for unlocking these attachments, and as I mentioned earlier, Weapon XP needs a rework, with the option I proposed earlier simply being Heist XP added onto the weapons. Alternatively to this, you could take your total kill count in the heist if you went loud and use it as an additive 0.1% XP per kill for the weapons XP, since the way it works now is simply by giving you a fixed XP value for the weapon dependent on the heist and method of completion. Personally, my fastest method has been completing Dirty Ice and Overkill Stealth with minimum loot, which takes about 5 minutes for a fresh start to get about 1500 weapon XP. Plus, having it be benefited by your total kills can really give you an exemplified feeling of accomplishment when you do something like getting all the bags in Cook-Off. Granted, most of these kills were from turrets, but still, that'd be an extra 161% on the total weapon XP if I had one I was leveling here. Now, the weapon selection is pretty good, and if attachments to change the firing mode are added or modified to do so, the variety in weapons would be very fun to experiment with. But I don't think the attachments are where this needs to particularly end, since there's some particular dynamics from the old skill system that I and many others still miss, like firing 3 shots from a double-barrel shotgun. I'll be going over tweaks to skills that I think need them, as well as going over a brand new skill tree that I think the game should definitely add for more stealth variety. But first, the skills that already exist in the game and what I changed in them. Looking at the Juggernaut tree, specifically at extra protection, I think the aced skill needs to be changed, and fortunately, we already have something that makes an excellent alternative to what already exists, and that's the original 4-plate passive from before the launch of Skills 2.0, that being the ability to repair 3 trauma damage on kill. I think the better way to handle this with how Skills 2.0 handles investing heavily into a skill tree is to make it so that it's 1 point of trauma healed on kill, with every 2 other skills equipped in Juggernaut, making it another 1 point of trauma repaired per kill. The base skill would still only benefit resistant armor plates, but it would also be much easier to understand than the 0.1 reduction for the amount of damage taken that it is currently, doubly so when that's something you barely feel when you're actually playing the game in my experience. Next, I want to talk about Headguard and changing it around a little bit. This one is fine on paper, but in practice, the skill's use is actually a lot more niche than you'd expect, only really being practical on low armor setups given their already short armor regen cooldown. That, as well as 0.2 or 0.6 seconds being usually all you'll get when you're trying to get headshot skills anyway, and the swarm of SWAT you're attempting to shoot resetting your armor's regen timer with each bullet they land on you. So looking back at the original skill system's armor synergy, I'd say to change this skill in 2 ways. Firstly, by making the cooldown on a per armor plate basis rather than a universal timer. So, say if you're using the base skill with a 4-plate impact setup, which is normally a 12-second regen, this base version of the skill would reduce the cooldown by 0.8 seconds per kill due to you having 4 armor plates. Secondly, I would add in the old effect of plate up onto this skill, so that whenever you land a kill, your current armor plate, so long as it's not an impact plate, would instantly regenerate upon headshot kill, alongside the general cooldown reduction the skill already offers for the entire armor frame. Given how many people use impact, this likely wouldn't be used by many of the players, but for those that use adaptive armor like myself, would open the door for that original Diet Anarchist playstyle from the old skill system of Payday 3. Sticking with the soldier tree for now, I want to look at the grenadier skills, more specifically, filling in a gap left by the old skill system's replacement, that being Blast Shield, a skill that was there to keep you from being damaged by your own frag grenades. Where would a skill like this fit into the grenadier tree though? Well, I'd say to make it the aced effect of burn damage, where enemies take more damage from your grenades already, but as an added benefit of acing it, you take even less damage from your grenades, like 10% less damage per skill equipped in the tree. Lastly, for the soldier page, I'm going to talk about something that I really think would benefit weapons in the game, emulate the old skill system, and also just emphasize side climbing as a whole, which is adding in some tier 2 and tier 3 weapon skills that are universal across all weapons, with the drawback of halved efficiency on the unintended weapon. Since we're in the soldier page, I'm going to talk about the assault rifle skills and one that would be interesting to have on other weapons, which is hollow point rounds. Essentially, this just increases the health damage you deal with assault rifles by 15 and 40% respectively. If you had this skill equipped but were using a handgun or SMG, this bonus would reduce to 7.5 and 20% respectively for that weapon or any other weapon that applies to. This is primarily for something like running armor bags, but wanting to use SMGs or marksman rifles instead of assault rifles. Moving on to the ninja tree, I'm just going to talk about one of the weird quirks of the dodge this skill and the go skill tree, and that's how, via side climbing, you can completely bypass the second line of this skill. Your maximum dodge chance will cap at 80%. For each active armor plate, it will decrease by 20%. If you just don't equip that skill, you don't get the negative effect of the armor plates. So I would just move that caveat to dodge to the armor frames themselves rather than the skill. For the special ops skill tree, the skill I would make universal for all weapons is Multitasker, making it so that if you're using a higher damage and lower armor pen weapon, it'd still have some use by staggering enemies, but only for half as long on non-SMG weapons. For the aced effect though, instead of the 8-second cooldown for meleeing an enemy, I would change this to be 1 second per bullet in your magazine if the weapon is not an SMG, and also just not working period on marksman rifles. Using the Blitzbruder LMG as an example here, that weapon has a 100 round magazine. If you used a quick melee to reload, you'd then have to wait 100 seconds to reload that way again with the Blitzbruder. Next, moving on to Hacker, I'm going to touch on the Black Hat skill tree, specifically Playback Aced. This skill lets you automatically mark guards within view of a camera, and it works fine. I don't have any problems with the skill itself. What I do have a problem with is how you can't also use this on your own micro camera tool should you decide to bring it with you in stealth. Really, why wouldn't we be able to mark guards through micro cameras just like the actual cameras in heists? We wouldn't need to loop our own cameras, obviously enough, but using them as a way to keep tabs on an area automatically would be a massive benefit to stealth and actually promote this tool's use instead of the only use for it, being a niche and syntax error or not needing to check the color of the switch in Golden Shark. In the mechanic tree, if I were to make a shotgun skill universal, I'd likely make it the speed loader skill, but change the maximum reload speed you can achieve 35% instead of 70%. If I were to also make point blank universal though, I'd change the 5 meter damage radius bonus to 10, and 25% for non-shotgun weapons. It was a little more difficult to make shotgun weapons universal because a lot of these are really only applicable to shotguns. Quickly moving on to Hacker again for handgun skills, this one wouldn't be warranted as much, but should probably get a universal skill for the sake of having one, which I would make Quick Draw. This skill increases your weapon swap speed and handgun ADS speed by 25 and 70% respectively. You should know the trend by now. For all non-handgun weapons, the ADS speed would be increased by less, but I'd make it 15% and 40% respectively instead. Not half exactly, but it's still a significant reduction. Anyway, the next skill tree I want to talk about is Imposter in the Conman page. I've already spoken about how I think this skill tree is pretty contradictory in what it wants from you, with how 4 of the 6 skills only really benefit stealth despite it being an adrenaline-based skill tree, but the skill I want to focus on primarily is Thrill Seeker, specifically the aced effect. It works fine on paper, but is completely worthless outside of stealth gameplay since you're masked up all the time and loud anyway. So instead, I'd add onto the base skill to also reduce your adrenaline draining rate by half when masked up. The aced effect I think should just be universal for the speed buff, as well as increasing your speed buff for however much adrenaline you have, like 1% for every 2 points of adrenaline. Finally, onto the professional page, where the universal skill from the longshot tree I would have is Armor Piercing. Armor Piercing removes 1 additional layer with a headshot, and the aced effect pierces through enemies. I would only make the aced effect apply to other weapons, since there's not much of a different way to minimize the effect if this were to apply it to other weapons. I would also say return policy would be fun to return, but it would only really be useful on weapons like shotguns, to bring up the 3 shots in a double barrel shotgun like before. The cooldown for returning a singular bullet would either be changed to 6 and 3 seconds respectively, or simply only be usable on shotguns and marksman rifles. I had fun with the old ammo funnel replenish playstyle, but I don't want to bring it back entirely. Now, those are all the skills that I wanted to immediately address, even though I do want to say I had written a whole section on head games before playing the open peer-to-peer beta, and seeing Starbreeze had already done something about that skill, as well as turrets infinitely scaling. So I'm just gonna move on to a new stealth tree that I think would be fun to play around with, while also bringing back some older skills from the original skill system. I'm not only going to suggest one new skill tree, but 2, since each page needs at least 3 skill trees to be completely filled out. Firstly, the skill tree I'm going to be calling Silent Assassin. The base skill, which I'd call Saboteur, would be a heavy investment skill like most others, where anything the game considers an illegal action, like flipping a switch or opening a jewelry box, would work 5% faster for each skill invested in the tree. Basically, anything that you do that has that red exclamation mark next to it. The aced skill would simply apply that bonus to any interaction while you're masked up, besides lockpicking and incident interactions, obviously enough. You can't make opening a door any faster. Moving on to Tier 2, the first skill here would actually just be Drop Cloth from the original skill system, making it so that any enemy you kill with a silenced weapon won't have their radio go off for 10 seconds, as well as not being detected by anyone nearby. Aced, that time would go be doubled. Why did I write that? For aced, that time would be doubled, going up to 20 seconds. The second Tier 2 skill I would call something like Running in the Halls, where you would get a buff similar to Rush whenever you start getting detected by a guard, while acing it would also give you the speed buff for simply marking guards. It's a way to combine 2 of the stealth skills from the older system that were used in tandem with each other pretty often, while also not being too intrusive. Or, instead of it being marking guards, it could function similarly to High Marks in the Black Hat tree, where you get a certain amount of speed for having a marked enemy nearby. Moving on to Tier 3, the first of these I think should bring back Slippery from the original skill system, letting you uncuff yourself instead of needing an AI buddy to do it for you if you're playing solo. Where it gets interesting is when you ace this skill, since I would have this be guard still catch you, but if you're in a secure area you'd be escorted out instead of arrested on the spot. It'd be a very long walk, but it's much better than getting arrested, I'm sure. The description will be something like, when caught by a guard in a secure area without being masked up, you'll be escorted out instead of arrested. The second Tier 3 skill I would call something like I Only Work Here, where guards detect you 35% slower in private areas, and aced reducing camera detection speed in secure areas by 35%. It's like Plain Sight, except if it was buffed and moved up a tier. It could also just be called Plain Sight 2. The last thing I'm going to talk about with this skill tree would be the final skill in Tier 4, which I'm calling Chasing Shadows. For the base skill, I would add the ability to use your bullets from a silenced weapon to distract guards, identically to how throwing knives function in the current game, except you don't need 3-plate armor for infinite knives when you have over 100 bullets. The ace skill, though, this is where I might get a bit of blowback from you guys with the concept. Effectively, by holding down the reload button for 5 seconds, once per heist you could remove your mask and go back into the social stealth mechanics. This would have to be the aced version of a Tier 4 skill for just how many gameplay avenues this opens up, even if it's only used as something of a get-out-of-jail-free card whenever you mess up a risky play, but that's why for balancing's sake, I would only allow this to be usable one single time per heist. Otherwise, this would just be as broken as infinitely scaling turrets or sniper rifle buffs. Am I done talking about skills? No, of course not. A while back, way back, when Skills 2.0 was first revealed, I made a much messier video than the ones I've been making recently. Unscripted, sloppily edited, the works. For the sake of not torturing you with that, I'm going to isolate the one thing I really want to talk about from that video, which was a skill tree for tools that I still think could and should get some good use in the current game. The Tier 1 skill, called Technomancer, would increase your tool's effective range by 5% for however many skills you have equipped in the tree. Acing this would give you 1 extra tool for every 2 skills equipped in the tree, with a maximum of 4 extra tools in total. The first Tier 2 skill I would call Infrasonic Inconvenience, making it so that if you have an infrasonic mine equipped in your loadout, that infrasonic mine would then also benefit from whatever throwable skills you have equipped. For example, if you have throwing knife skills equipped, the infrasonic mine would then explode with close range needles, applying the same effects as skills like Laceration and Deep Wounds to enemies nearby. Or for flashbang, skills like Flash Mob and Spotlight, using them as a way to mark enemies for synergy with the Spatial Awareness skill. The second Tier 2 skill is very simple and easy to understand, especially for a skill from the original system, which I'm going to rename Total Recall. This skill will just let you pick up your tools once they've been placed down, and acing it would let you pick them back up even after they've been used. Besides the infrasonic mine, you can't exactly pick back up something that goes kaboom. Moving up to tier 3, the first skill I call Distortion basically just doubles the duration of ECM jammers. The aced version is a way to bring back the older cam distortion skill by making any camera within 0.5 meters of a placed ECM jammer disabled until the ECM jammer is either removed or used up. This would essentially be useful whenever Cerberus core is active in a heist, making your runtimes effectively useless outside of an immediate 5-second window. The second tier 3 skill would be called Recycler, and this is a skill to somewhat circumvent the need for Bounty Hunter to gain more tools. Effectively, this skill would replenish one tool for every 50 ammo boxes you pick up, with acing the skill reducing that count to 30 ammo boxes. Lastly, the tier 4 skill I would call Marked for Death, and it would make any enemy marked by you or your tools if they do so last 50% longer. The aced effect would make enemies marked by your tools also suffer a minus 20% damage debuff until their marking is removed. Most of what I want to address with the addition of a tool-based skill tree is pretty much making sure that you can use them in loud gameplay far more often, as well as being able to use them more in general. Currently, the only tool you can really get skills for is the ECM jammer, but even then that's primarily for stunning either a singular dozer, or just to spray and pray into a crowd to finally get them to leave you alone. Plus, I want to give the infrasonic mine some love, since that's a tool that's existed since the game's inception and it's effectively been left behind since... well, actually since inception. I don't think I've ever seen anyone use this tool. Speaking of tools, I think someone should look at adjusting the text description for tools, since it's inaccurate as the current amount of tools you get in the game itself. As for a third skill tree, I'm gonna be honest here, I didn't write up anything for it. Mostly because I was stuck between considering two options, those being melee and akimbo weapon types getting a skill tree, neither of which exist in the game currently, and I don't want to jump the gun on either one, especially considering both of them would be very cool to have. Alas, I am but a simple man who doesn't actually work for the company making this game, so I don't know which one, if either, is going to be implemented. Either way, the third skill tree in this theoretical page would likely be something to do with that new weapon type, or something else like the human shield mechanic, which at this point feels like it's been pretty much left to dry while the rest of the game gets love and care. Not that it doesn't need it, it really does. Circling back for a moment though, I'm sure at least a few of you have noticed the name I picked for the stealth tree, Silent Assassin. After all, you've heard me mention the Silent Assassin a few times now, and the main source of inspiration for that. Yes, I'm referring to the Hitman series. This one is more of something I personally love to see in the game rather than something necessary, but the idea of Agent 47 joining the Payday gang isn't exactly the most far-out idea. After all, the World of Assassination Trilogy's social stealth mechanics are much more complex, but structurally similar to Payday 3's social stealth. Agent 47 is clearly proficient in weapons of all kinds. I mean, seriously, this weapon wall is exhaustive. He can also survive a shootout just about as well as anyone in the Payday gang could, and Agent 47 even robs a bank in New York City. You couldn't make a more fitting crossover character if you tried. Plus, this would also be an interesting way to expand on the narrative a bit. John Concord is a disappointing antagonist purely because the way he was defeated was by smacking his stocks and then he's magically taken care of off-screen. That's not how it would go, really. If anything, he'd come back stronger than ever, sending a crime family after the Payday gang to keep them busy while he collects resources to take them down for good this time, and Agent 47 can be the one to deliver this news to the Payday gang. He is an expert in his field, after all. Now, you might be wondering what mask 47 would bring with him, and I'd say to keep it simple and in line with the morbid humor of the World of Assassination trilogy. The mask would just be a replica of 47's face. That's it. Nothing special about it. You're just wearing 47's face, and suddenly nobody knows who it is underneath the mask. They just see you holding a gun and start to panic. Back to what the game currently has in it, though, instead of what I want it to have. I want to end this off by talking about some much more minor gripes that I have that I think could be easily fixed. For starters, one that might end up being somewhat addressed in the update with peer-to-peer is not knowing what server region you'll end up connecting to, and resulting in 400 or so ping that makes the game unbearable to play. Just make it so that when you highlight a heist in the server browser, it shows either how much ping you have when attempting to connect, or just what region it's in if the heist is being hosted by a dedicated server. Now, something else I want to talk about is the selection of cosmetics available in the game, like the pattern for each heister's default mask. I understand not getting Joy's pattern of LEDs on a mask, but why couldn't we have Dallas's American flag or Chains' very intricate pattern to customize on another mask? Those would be really fun to play around with and actually really incentivize even more customization. Of course, I wouldn't stop with just mask patterns. I also have a bit of an issue with the outfits available, more specifically, their lack of color choices in quite a few cases, especially the DLC ones. Now, I also think that the way these are organized could use some work, like putting all the variants of, say, Joy's Payday 2 outfit in one tab, and then when you select it, seeing all the color variants you have on your account to pick from. The same would apply to gloves as well, for the record. But I'm also talking about the DLC outfits. Even if they only get 5 variants, it would be much more fun to customize your heister with them instead of always being stuck with the same boring military green for one that looks like body armor. Or you could be extra edgy and just have a fully black trench coat. Just mess around and have fun with these. I doubt it's difficult to tweak colors. Speaking of colors, I want to bring up the color of adaptive armor in the current game. Why is it green? Who decided to change it to green? I don't like it, especially since it confuses itself with the adrenaline color, and also makes it much harder than it needs to be to distinguish it from impact armor plates. Just change the adaptive back to the purple color it was before Armor 2.0, please. I don't understand why this change happened in the first place, and I don't want to have to mod my game just to have this color back. One final thing I'm going to mention is how the inventory works in the game currently, and something that would easily remedy how cluttered it can get, and that's a tab system to sort between specific items. For example, with cosmetics like outfits, you could have a button on the side that shows all the possible tabs you can have active, with all of them enabled by default, of course. There would be a tab to enable or disable things like certain weapon types, preset weapons, and favors to purchase, as well as one for each of the DLC packs, like one for Boys in Blue or Delivery Charge, as well as the inverse. I doubt this will be a thing until they can sort out the save data being on a server, but once that's figured out, this would be something I doubt most people would end up being able to live without. While yes, this is a much longer video than my usual, I want to at least offer my thoughts on the kind of approach that could be taken with implementing these things, despite the fact that I'm not a game developer or anything like that. But basically, I wouldn't expect all of this in a singular patch. I'd much sooner expect this to be implemented bit by bit, like having one patch introduce the expanded weapon customization alongside re-implementing challenges, which may be what this event thing is, but we'll see in March. While something new, like the stealth and tool skill trees I proposed, could be developed in the background alongside with a potential new weapon type that would get its own skill tree. I'm not saying this should be how it's handled, but there is an age-old saying that would apply here. Work smarter, not harder. And those are my overall major pain points with Payday 3, as well as some things that I just love to see return. Plus, I doubt that people who played Stealth before Skills 2.0 will complain about some of the skills I propose making return. If you have your own general gripes with Payday 3 that aren't just no offline mode or things of that sort, I'd like to hear it as well. But until next time, I appreciate you watching, and I hope you take care.